Hi, I'm Mark Rossano, joined again with Serkan Sahin to really go through what is in the EIA numbers. You know, we had some really weird things happening across the US, and now specifically we've had more happen in the EIA information that came out on Wednesday. Now, just to be clear, the EIA is a data point. You know, it's not something to live or die on. It's just something to look at to get an idea of what's happening in the US and what can happen going forward. So the three different components, because different data points will move the market at different times. The big focus right now is Cushing, Pad 3, and more importantly, what's happening in the gasoline distillate market. But now for this conversation, let's just focus on distillate. And this is mostly diesel at this point. So in terms of as we go into the deep dive numbers, you have to look at the EIA Cushing data. So the Cushing data shows what really happened as the May contracts rolled off, and it was the fact that we had this massive oversupply of oil going into a very tight number of tankers. Now, Pad 3 is your mixture of, Pad 3, just as a definition, is the Gulf of Mexico. You have a significant amount of Saudi crude coming in, and you already have an oversupply of product across the distillate and gasoline space. So these are some key focuses that we're going to have going forward, because these three different data points are really going to drive the market, specifically in the US, on both the WTI Cushing, but as well as the coastal side as we go into the market. So now I have Serkan here to really go in and see, what are you guys thinking about when you're looking at the EIA data from someone who is in Europe and looking at some other data points?
Yeah, like we were watching the WTI craziness, like we were watching with the really fear that the same thing would happen to Brent. So we were very excited to see what would happen with the EIA data. We understand that the Cushing data is really about the financial side of it, but we're also checking close the Pad 3 because Pad 3 is important to us. We are sending crude there and then we are taking products from there. And I saw that the refined utilizations are very, very low. And I really want you, I hope that you can help me to understand actually what's going on in there, because that's our focus point.
Sure. And it's a great point, because if you think about what's happening in the refiner space, you have these utilization rates coming down more and more, which means that the refiners are going to be very picky in terms of the type of oil that they use. So, Joan, just looking at Pad 3, as of Wednesday, they were pulling at about 7.1 million barrels a day of throughput, which will most likely go below 7 million this week and into next week. And what does that mean? That really means that they just don't have any place to put their product. They can't send it into the US, throughout the US, because demand is so abysmal just in terms of the lockdown. But at the same time, they also can't send it into that export market because you have competitive product coming out of Asia and really capping what we would normally send into the export market. So they have no real choice at this point than to say, look, guys, I can't take the US shale crude, so let's send it somewhere else. I'm going to take some waterborne, but I just don't have anywhere to put it. So I'm going to have to start to roll back and have those economic run cuts.
Yeah, so we also see that the gasoline stocks around New York, like a Pad 1B area, is also like very, very high. Is it also the reason about this 73.8% like historic low utilization rates, because the colonial pump is like not operative now, it's not useful?
Now, and it's a great question, and it's something that you have to go back, let's call it, I think it was about a month ago, Colonial put out a memo saying that they were going to cut runs by about 20%. And it was to try to get ahead of the fact that they had to say, look, we're not going to be able to take your product because there's going to be no receiving and no storage. So you're going to have to say, look, you're either going to sell it locally, send it into the export market, or you're going to have to store it. And as we can see from some of these storage numbers, they're really running out of places to store it.
Okay, so like interesting. And yeah, so like personally, I know that EIA is actually weekly data is like a calculation, not actual data. Yeah, you agree with me. But like from our side, it's really, we are physically far other side of Atlantic. And when we look at the production data, it is only just the total level. And when you look at import, it's Pad level. So just what should we do to get the best from EIA data? Like what do you suggest to us?
So it's a great point, and you really have to look at what is happening in the EIA data, but also what are the actual crack spreads. And you can get those calculated crack spreads by just looking at what is the spot market for gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and then you can start to look at, okay, well, what is the refiner actually making? So if the refiner is losing money on gasoline, they're going to try to increase their diesel cut. So you're going to start to weigh that calculation and say, okay, well, how does the refiner make more diesel? Is it going to be more Iraqi crude, or is it going to be more U.S. shale crude? In this instance, it'll be more Iraqi. So you know that there's going to be a cut in terms of what is the flow rate coming out of the different pads. And just recently, the FERC regulates a lot of these pipeline flows. So there has to be announcements because there's open season in terms of how much crude is going to actually flow in the pipelines. So we've already seen force majeures get pushed around, commentary in terms of, look, guys, in May, you have to cut 20 to 50% on my pipe because I have nowhere to put it. So that's how you continue to kind of work its way up. And then through the primary vision frac spread count, you can say, look, this is how much new production is coming on, and then we have the static numbers, looking back in terms of what is currently producing, and then using this frac spread count, you can predict what is going to be the future production, and that's how you kind of marry the two to say, look, this is how bad the situation really is.
Yeah. So like with this army of Saudi vessels currently heading towards the US, it's getting much more crucial to get the real time of the production data. And I really hope that the people will be much more educated about how to use EIA data, and we will get more Frac Spread Count level quality data, that we will get the best picture. So I really appreciate that help.
No, I thank you for the questions. I mean, it's funny, you talk about this armada just flowing in of 50, 60 million barrels. And if you look at, what is the Pad 3 going to want to run? They're going to want to run that crude, which is going to push that U.S. crude further into Cushing or into other storage regions. And, there's no reason why we can't see some of these negative future contracts again, just given how bad things really are on the U.S., demand for that U.S. crude.
From Europe, we will be watching your frac spread videos much more closely.
Yeah, well, thank you for pushing those through, and it's interesting because we really try to look at and with your help and guidance, we're going to focus on EIA, the ARA, Fallujah, Japan, and specifically Singapore data, just to say, look, this is the global storage situation. It's getting dire, and it's going to reverberate, and we really need to focus on what data points within the EIA, because it's always going to change. And right now, Pad 3, Cushing, and some of these product storage levels, specifically distillate, will really be a moving target.
Thank you so much, Mark. Now I think for everyone, it's much more clear about the EIA now. Thank you.
Well, thanks again for joining us, Serkan. Please stay tuned for more, because Serkan is going to be a common guest, and is going to start having his own videos as well. So thanks again for joining us. Look forward to speaking with you guys again tomorrow when we put out our primary vision frac spread count, and look at some other topics, specifically the supply demand that we spoke about, and what does oil and the products really look like on a global level. So thanks again, and please stay tuned.
Bye-bye.